Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Michael Hall
You're
and Michael Reed.
Guess what, guys? Today, I voted for Kanye West.
Did you really? It was
No, I did
funny.
not vote for Kanye West.
I made a comment because I saw earlier on Twitter that Kanye got 266 votes in Kentucky. Who in
Nah.
Kentucky is voting for
Yeah,
Kanye?
Kentucky. Wow.
Right.
Good for Kentucky. It was probably all of Kentucky's men's basketball team. Coach Calipari knows how to recruit.
Right.
That's what he's doing.
I hope everyone had a great Halloween weekend. Later on in the episode, we are going to be joined by Kelsey Nelson, the host of the Fit and the Life for the Washington football team. She will be joining us and give us a look into the Washington football team after their bye week. It feels like eternity ago. So we kind of get revamped and we get some reassurance with the Washington football team and some questions that we have. But before we get into the interview with Kelsey, let's kind of review the NFL altogether, fellas. Let's talk about some of the surprises from the weekend. Hall?
Surprises from the weekend. I guess I'll go with the Steelers being 8-0. I thought the Ravens would hand them their first loss. I thought that even though Lamar kind of had a bad game for his standards, turned the ball over 4 times, it still only turned out to be like a 3 to 4 point game or something like that, I think. Came down to the wire. So, yeah, I was surprised about that. And on the opposite spectrum of things, I was surprised that Jared Goff looked so horrible and that the Dolphins defense looked like the 85 Bears because that was just like ridiculous.
Yeah, the Dolphins are looking like a totally different team. They've beaten the 49ers and now handedly beat the Rams. And I loved Brian Flores' quote. He was like, if looking at the stats, it looks like we got dominated. But no, that's not the way I saw it. And I was like, dude, you're absolutely right because that was an insane game. What about you, Reed?
Yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, the Dolphins looking like a legit team. Like you would expect if you were before this week, if you were to say that the Dolphins won this game as by as many points as they did, you would be like, oh damn, looks like Tua's the real deal. Tua went off. Tua threw for what, 76 yards and one touchdown. I mean, he didn't do much. He didn't have to. That defense turned up, played fantastic. But my biggest surprise was the Cincinnati Bengals.
You had to steal it.
Beating the Tennessee Titans. The Titans, who are coming off of their first loss of the season, have now lost 2 in a row. They were a team that they're still a very good team, but Joe Burrow, old Joey B, was looking like he did back in LSU, man. The Titans can't get after the passer, and that's one thing that they thought would happen with Jadeveon Clowney. And he's gotten some pressures, but he doesn't have a sack yet this year. And Joe Burrow was literally looking like he did at LSU, where he was running, scrambling behind the line of scrimmage, breaking sacks, heaving it up downfield to guys on the sidelines, and they were catching it. It looked exactly like his LSU tape, and it was awesome to see.
Side note, y'all thought that T. Higgins wasn't going to be that good from the tape in Clemson.
I did.
Tried to told y'all, man, the eye
Right.
test. I tried to tell you the eye test.
It's
But
true.
you know what? It's crazy because to me, he passed the eye test with a bunch of other weapons around him, but it turns out T. Higgins is just that guy. He's
He's
that
the
good.
alpha. He's
He
taking
was
over.
the alpha. He
Yeah, and
was.
look, and speaking of alphas and the biggest surprises of the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings beat up on the Green Bay Packers. Dalvin Cook, 4 total touchdowns, just completely dominated that game. What has happened to the Packers?
The Packers have no fighting them.
I know 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a pod here, and we were talking about the top power
I had them
rankings
as
for
the
the
best
NFL.
team.
Right, and we were talking about them being a top 3 team in the NFL. They're not playing like it right now.
No.
I think they're a huge surprise because they're trying to find a formula for success, and they just can't seem to find it.
Right. I also think having Aaron Jones out
Yeah,
has
definitely.
hurt them a little bit. But, I mean, Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers have still played well. It seems like they're playing with no emotion. It's weird. It's like they're getting behind, and then they just completely tap out and give up. And they're getting beat by these teams that they shouldn't lose to. And it's just weird to see. And you'd like to see some more fight in them. I know from a few Packers fans, that's the one thing that they're very frustrated with, is it seems like this team just has no heart right now.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, their biggest problem for the past 2 to 3 seasons, honestly, has been their rush defense.
Yeah.
If you look at what the San Francisco 49ers did to them both times, regular season and playoffs last year, just destroyed them in the run game. Just like I said, in the playoffs, I think they had 40 rushes in the playoffs or something like that against them. Just completely dominated them.
Mhm.
And you saw it again on Sunday with Dalvin Cook, one of the top backs in the game. He had 4 total touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns against them. And again, their rushing defense is not good. I know a lot of people wanted them to kind of make a move. I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Will Fuller," and all the people on Twitter and all the national analysts are like, "No, They don't need another offensive weapon because they have Davante Adams. They're missing Aaron Jones, which is like a big thing.
Right.
And they're going to have Lazard coming back at some point throughout the season. He'll be back before the playoffs. They need a middle linebacker or some type of linebacking core. And it definitely showed on Sunday. So
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do going forward, but that offense better outscore them like the Chiefs or something like that.
And that's the thing. Yes, having Will Fuller would be nice, somebody like that, but that's more of a luxury at this point. You're 100% right. Their defense needs to pick it up. They have great pieces in the secondary. They've got a decently solid defensive line, but that linebacking core, man, just can't stop the run. They can't stop it to save their lives, and it's showing. Once teams figure that out, especially once it gets later in the year and it gets colder and teams start to pound the ball away at you, you have no chance.
Football.
You have no chance.
And I wanted to harp on a little bit more into detail with what Hall had said earlier with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens game.
Right.
Fantastic game. Lamar Jackson just lost that game for them on Sunday. And it sucks to say because it looks like in these two AFC matchups that the Ravens have gone against, being the Chiefs and the Steelers, Lamar has not looked good. And their style of offense is obviously it cannot keep up. And look, the Steelers did not play well. Ben Roethlisberger did not play well at all. The turnovers just kept them in the game. The Ravens should have, I think they rushed for over 250 yards on the Steeler defense, and they still couldn't put the game away. That obviously right there, those need to be fixed up for Lamar.
And it's very weird, Lamar. I understand some people go through, especially after an MVP caliber year where they just lit the league on fire with a rushing attack that hasn't been seen. But Lamar just hasn't looked like the same quarterback throwing the ball really all season. I mean, he's had games where he's thrown for 96 yards. He just doesn't look as comfortable in the pocket. And we kind of figured that would happen. He obviously wouldn't replicate last year, but he just doesn't look nearly as good as he did. And some of that can be attributed to his receivers. I mean, everybody knows that he only has Mark Andrews really right now that does anything, but the Steelers picking up Avery Williamson, I believe, was a huge acquisition because once Devin Bush went down, they needed an inside linebacker, and they stole him from the Jets.
Yeah, did you see that that photo of him in New York with his thumb out, looking for a ride to Pittsburgh?
Right, it was like going from 0-7 to 8-0 or something.
That was hilarious. I thought that was in great taste, the fact that he did that. But another big surprise for me, the Philadelphia Eagles struggled against the Dallas Cowboys. And this Washington football team whooped up on those Dallas Cowboys. And I saw this really funny meme that the Cowboys flew to D.C. to kick a field goal, and then the next week they flew to Philly just to kick 3 more. And you're absolutely right. That's exactly what they did. But Carson Wentz, I was on Sunday, had the joint pod with Matty Jane and Freddie and Ian Bacon for the Halfway Season Fan podcast. And I talked about that game in particular, and I was like, dude, I'm really, really concerned about that. And I completely lost my train of thought, but it's fine.
No, I mean, you're 100% right. Carson Wentz has not.
Oh yeah, I was
like
saying
Carson
he was the
Wentz.
best. He was the best quarterback in the NFC East, and he just looked dreadful against a terrible Dallas. He made Trayvon Diggs look good. And look, I know
Trayvon Diggs looked really good though.
And
I mean,
credit,
he got burned a lot.
And give credit to Terry because last week after Terry burned him, a lot of guys would kick a guy while he's down. Terry reached out to him and said, keep grinding. You're a really good dude. You're working hard. Just keep doing your thing. And credit to Trayvon Diggs for responding.
Right. Yeah. And he did. He had those 2 interceptions. He had a 90.2 grade from PFF, I believe. But yeah, it's so weird seeing what's going on with the Eagles. Like this NFC East is just so it's all over the place. Like we lose to the Giants go. They're in a game with the Buccaneers that comes down to the wire, which was a fantastic game last night. But then you come back and then the Eagles will beat up on the Giants, but we'll beat up on the Eagles. And it doesn't make sense right now. Nothing makes sense in the NFC East. It's so bad.
Yeah, and look, like you just said, Carson Wentz turned the ball over 4 times. Again, I don't know how they won that game other than the fact that Ben DiNucci was the quarterback.
Yeah.
Even if Andy Dalton was a quarterback at that game, I think that the Cowboys would have somehow won that game.
Yep.
But with that being said, I think that this upcoming game on Sunday, I know we're going to break it down on Thursday even more, but I think this upcoming Sunday is the swing game of the season. We win this game, I personally think we're going to be in the driver's seat going into Week 17 against Philly.
Right.
We lose this game, we might as well just be like, all right, the division's out of it, or we're done. Just go to next year. But with that being said, Carson Wentz is playing. I was watching FS1 or Speak for Yourself on FS1, and Marcellus Wiley and Bucky Brooks were just because Emmanuel Acho used to play for Philly. He loves Philly, loves the Eagles, blah blah blah. But they were just going in on Carson Wentz, and they were talking about he's hot garbage. He's like the the trash juice at the bottom of the garbage bag that you just
Oh
like,
my
you
goodness.
stink. They were like, man, he's playing like some boo boo. He needs some poopery to spray around. Like, it was just hilarious. But now, I mean, and they weren't lying though. He's playing like that.
Yeah.
But hey, a win is a win, I guess. So they're up by 1.5 games, and hopefully we can get this dub on Wednesday. Hopefully get this dub on Sunday. I wish they were playing Wednesday. That'd be tight.
Right.
Hopefully we get this dub on Sunday and close even more, closer to a half a game on the
Yeah.
Eagles.
And look, I know that there's not a huge range or multiple guys that we can really dissect over with this so far because Tua just got brought up and he only had one game under his belt. But right now, who would you guys say is the best rookie quarterback in the NFL? I know Justin Herbert has done and made a good point for himself, but I also feel like Joe Burrow defeating the Tennessee Titans really solidified himself as a good quarterback. So let's debate this, fellas. Who's the best rookie quarterback so far?
I'm still gonna go with Joe Burrow. Look, I love what Justin Herbert's done. Justin Herbert has completely outplayed his tape from college. He's fixed his accuracy issues. He's making big plays. He's almost kind of been Mahomes-esque with the way that he runs behind the line and makes something out of nothing with his strong arm. But they've also lost so many games where they've had the lead by 17, 21 points. I think it was like 4 in a row. And Joe Burrow's back there playing with less weapons. He doesn't have nearly as good of a receiving core. I know both offensive lines are in shambles, but especially the Bengals. And Joe Burrow is still out there putting up pretty good numbers, and he just led them to a win over a playoff team, a team that was in the AFC Championship game last year. And Joe Burrow, I think, is the real deal. I think if you switch spots with them, if you were to put Joe Burrow on the Chargers and Justin Herbert on the Bengals, I think that Joe Burrow would be outperforming Justin Herbert even how he is right now. So I'm still going to go with Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow is the best rookie in the NFL right now, quarterback.
Yeah, I'll go with Justin Herbert just because honestly I picked him up in fantasy and he's been killing it for me. But I mean, look, all your points are obviously 100% valid. Joe Burrow, he's been pretty consistent from week 1 up to week 8. Justin Herbert obviously came in week 2, I think it was 2 or 3. I think it was week 3. Week 2, yeah. So we came in week 2. So he has another extra start over top of him. But with that being said, I'll go Justin Herbert just to be devil's advocate because I'm not going to put those losses on Justin Herbert. He's out there putting up numbers. He's putting up numbers. He's putting points on the board. This defense is atrocious. I had no idea they were this bad. I didn't know that Derwin James was like such a key part of that defense because
they lost more than that.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, even going back to last year, like the defense was playing like three times.
They lost Casey Hayward. You know how good he is.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So
fantastic.
you lose trade away Desmond King. Yeah. So I mean, obviously they're kind of throwing this season away, but the future looks bright for them offensive wise because Justin Herbert looks good. They're going to get Austin Eckler back eventually.
Yep.
Obviously you got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams coming into his own.
Hunter
But with that
Henry.
being said, like obviously, my heart of heart says Joe Burrow because he's been so consistent, but just because Justin Herbert's been putting up such great numbers and his defense is pretty much just doing nothing for him, I'll go with him.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to be able to dissect this, but I just feel like it is Herbert. He is playing incredibly well right now, but it's one of those things where I feel like by week 14, it could be one of those situations we're looking back at it. Like, remember when Justin Herbert was playing well? Remember when that was a thing?
Yeah.
And that could easily digress given the situation. But let's see. Let's see what the future holds.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the NFL in particular. Before we get into the Washington football team, I know it's a Washington football team-based show, fellas, but we are going to be really hammering it down in the last 45 minutes. So, the overrated teams and the underrated teams that you guys feel in the NFL so far. Reed, I'll start with you.
Overrated. I mean, I don't really know how overrated they are really right now, but the Bears are not nearly as good as their record had indicated. They're just not. I mean, they're just not a good team. Obviously, when you bench Mitch Trubisky for Nick Foles, and Nick Foles isn't even playing that good, like it's I mean, the Bears. I know as of recently, I don't know what the record is right now. I don't have it off the top of my head, but they were at one point undefeated, and I think they were 5-1 at one point, and they're not that good. And then on the flip side, I think that honestly, I'm just gonna say it. I think that the Bengals are a better team than people are giving them credit for. I do. I think that with Joe Burrow, they can. That's a competitive division now. I'm not saying that they're going to beat the Ravens or the Steelers or even the Browns, but I do think everybody was talking about them being in the running for the number 1 pick, and they were going to have to draft Penei Sewell or trade it or whatever. But I think they're going to finish kind of middle of the pack, and that division is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to pile on them because I know everyone's going to give the excuses, but my most overrated team right now is the 49ers. I know that they've had some injuries, but they have not lived up to their pedigree. Trent Williams left one bad team to go to another, which is kind of karma in a way. It sucks for him. Obviously I'm a Trent Williams guy, but the way the situation fizzled out, I don't really care. I'm not going to sit here and sulk for you. But the underrated team, I'm going to have to stick with the Miami Dolphins. They are just playing incredibly well. Xavier Howard was a guy I wanted the Washington football team to go after in the offseason before they signed Ronald Darby. I thought Xavier Howard is a very, very good corner, very underrated, and they're obviously showing out down there in Miami. They're playing very good football right now. Brian Flores has those guys playing. Dude, I wonder if they can beat the Buffalo Bills, to be perfectly honest with you. What about you, Hall?
Right. I'll start with my underrated because my overrated, you guys are going to need to put on your flame retardant vest because it's going to be a hot take coming through. But for my underrated team, I will go with.
What'd you call me? Just kidding. That's terrible.
And, my underrated team, I'll go with. I was going to go the Dolphins, but I'm trying to think of another team off the top of my head really quick. I'll go the Packers. I know a lot of people are down on their defense. I know, obviously they're not really an underrated team per se, but after this past weekend, a lot of people are questioning are they actually contenders? Or are they just pretenders? And I think that once they get Alan Lazard back, Aaron Jones will come back healthy. AAA, Aaron Jones, Aaron Rodgers, and Devontae Adams are going to come into full effect. They're going to pull a trifecta on them, and they're going to pretty much do what the Chiefs did last year and just kind of outscore teams to kind of de facto their horrible defense. But my overrated team, like I said, get ready. There's a fireball coming through. Is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know that they're undefeated. I know this defense obviously is balling. They're going back to what their roots were, which is play great defense and don't lose the game. But it seems like Big Ben is trying to lose the games for them because he just throws picks after picks after picks. They've only played out of the 8 teams that they've beaten. They've only played really 2 good teams. That's the Titans and the Ravens that they just played last week. And again, Lamar Jackson, you can really say that the Ravens and Lamar Jackson lost that game rather than the Steelers actually won that game.
Right.
And again, going back to the Titans game, Gostkowski makes that kick. I'm pretty sure they're going to go to overtime and lose that game as well. And Titans had a lot of mistakes in that game as well. But with that being said, they're undefeated. I'm not going to go on them that much, but I think they're overrated in my opinion, just because Big Ben turns the ball over a lot. And they've only played 2 out of the 6 teams that their wins are actually legit playoff teams.
Can I give you one more team that I feel isn't necessarily underrated because they're really bad right now, but they also kind of just got a tough break with their first half schedule? It's been the Houston Texans. They got brutalized the first 6 games of the season, and after that they just weren't good enough, and now it's fire sale apparently, or it was supposed to be. It's not right now.
Well, I think they said the GM teams were calling them, and the GM said all but 3 players were on the trading block, which tells you something. Bill, that was a fire sale to say the least, right? Okay. Now let's move on to the Washington football team. I just saw before we recorded that Pro Football Focus had rated 2 of the 4 top-graded rookies in the NFL so far were Washington football team players. I think it's very easy to say that is Chase Young and Antonio Gibson. I'm just blown away that they're on that list, that high up. I know that they're playing incredibly well, but at this point in the season, did we really think that we'd see Antonio Gibson on that list? And I'll start with you, Hall.
Obviously, I was the big Antonio Gibson guy when we drafted him. But with that being said, I did not think he would be this high rated this quickly. Obviously, I think PFF has him as their highest rated rookie running back, which is great. He breaks tackles. He's great in open space. He's a playmaker for us. He lines up everywhere as a receiver, outside, inside, slot, lines up in the backfield. And, I think that he's getting more patient as the season goes along. I think he's finding his running lanes a lot more and kind of he's seeing the cutback lanes a lot more. And, the future is going to look hopefully great for him in the second half of the season as he pretty much becomes the bell cow to try to make this playoff push for us.
Yeah, no, look, I'm going to steal something from Reed that he actually said last week and talking about how Antonio Gibson looks like a young Le'Veon Bell. And what was the one thing that everyone said about Le'Veon Bell that separated him from other running backs? It was the patient running, right? He would get into the hole, he would wait, then go. With Antonio Gibson, that was kind of what the issue was with the coaching staff, right? They were telling him that he was too premature with approaching some of those holes and wasn't waiting. As soon as he learns, maybe he should watch some Le'Veon Bell tape from his back in the day and his cream of the crop days, because maybe that would help Antonio Gibson. I'm absolutely right there with you, Hall. At the beginning of the season, with AP here, with everything going on, I did not think that he was going to be getting that much of a work. But I will tell you what, Hall. I will tell everyone here, as soon as he was drafted, Hall was telling Reed and I how good he was, and I have to give you credit for that.
And you know what? I'm the one who did the breakdown of him too before the draft, and I remember being like, he could be a third down back, maybe develop into somebody. But when we drafted him, all I remember thinking is, we have Darius Geis. That worked out. Yeah. We have Adrian Peterson. Like, what are we doing? We need a receiver or a tackle. But then Hall talked me off the ledge. Obviously, he was right. But no, it's surprising, and it's especially surprising when you see how far ahead of the other rookie running backs he is. I know everybody wants to talk about Clyde Edwards-Helaire and James Robinson, some of these guys, but Edwards-Helaire has a 75 rating, I believe, by PFF. Mm-hmm. Antonio Gibson, he's the next closest. Antonio Gibson has an 80. So Antonio Gibson is 5 points higher than the next closest running back in terms of PFF. And Antonio Gibson forces a missed tackle on 26% of his carries. That's the most in the NFL, not just for a rookie, of any player in the NFL, any running backs. 26% of the time he touches the ball, he forces a missed tackle. And he's still growing as a runner. He's still learning. And I think he's only going to get better. And I'm excited to see what the future has to hold for him. Not just like 2 years down the line, but like the second half of this season, I think he's going to play better.
Yeah, I didn't hop on the Antonio Gibson train until I actually went and did a film breakdown on him. After the draft, I did a breakdown on every draft prospect that we had, the Washington football team had picked. And when I watched his film, the one thing I wrote was, he is a semi-truck that can launch into outer space. Right. And what I mean by that is his size, his build, and how fast he is. You don't really find that in guys his size. And the way how elusive he is and how he could break tackles, you don't really see that.
Right, and it was also kind of the way Memphis used him. Memphis used him on a lot of stretch plays, and that's where he got a lot of his yardage. So it was almost like, can this guy pound the ball up the middle? Like, what can you do? There were so many question marks. But then you just look at his size and you look at his athleticism and his speed. Like, of course this guy could run the ball up the middle. But his bread and butter, man, has been getting him to the outside, behind the tackle on the guard, and letting him do his thing. And he's forced some crazy missed tackles. Just get the guy the ball.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because we're just like overlooking the fact that Chase Young is the other Washington rookie on this list, and how well he's been playing.
I expected Chase Young to be the top-rated rookie.
Exactly,
in the NFL.
I know that's what's unfortunate about it, because he does deserve recognition for playing so well.
Right, I do think that it's still a shock to me, and I think a lot of fans, when they just go around and look at the actual stats, they'll see he only has 2.5 sacks, and he hasn't had one in a while. But Chase Young affects the game in so many more ways than just sacks. He completely ruins game plans. He's putting pressure on the quarterback at an unbelievable rate. He has so many hits. He's just forcing quarterbacks to make quick and bad decisions. And not only that, his one weakness coming into the NFL was against the run, everybody said. He's been dominant against the run. You see this guy chasing down plays from behind whenever the ball's going to the outside, whenever there's a stretch play or a toss, he's chasing down the running back. He never gives up on a play. This guy is he's a freak of nature. And even though it might not always show up in the stat sheet, it's good to have. This is where places like PFF come in handy.
Yeah. And I saw on Twitter, I think it was Kyle Stackpole that put it out there that everyone expected Chase Young to come in and to like kind of compete for Javon Curse's rookie sack total, maybe even possibly break it.
Just real quick, he still could. Javon Curse through the first half of his rookie season only had 3 sacks.
And that's what I was just gonna say. I was like, I think Stackpole's when I put it on Twitter. Now I was gonna say that, like, he only had 3 sacks through the first half of the season. Then that the last 8 games, he just turned up, and I could definitely see Chase Young doing that. Like I said, we're going against teams like the Giants, the Bengals, the Lions, the Cowboys again, the Eagles again, Week 17. Obviously, Seahawks, tough battle. Steelers going to be a tough matchup. And then the 49ers are really banged up right now, so I think that's going to be another swing game that could possibly get us over the hump. But those are all teams that you could definitely see Chase Young. I'm not going to say get a sack per game or multiple sacks per game, but I could definitely see him getting to double digits per se if everything goes right and this defense plays like it has been for the first half.
None
Yeah.
of those offensive lines terrify you. We'll put it that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, and look, this is going to be on Jack Del Rio to be able to scheme Chase Young into situations where he can't get double teamed and chipped constantly all game long. Kind of put him in a heavy set formation where on the other side you put heavy and then put him single because they're going to have to move guys over. I would rather have that. And that being said, Jack Del Rio on
Segue.
it went after Brian Baldinger, sweet old Brian Baldinger.
As he should have.
I know everyone loves Baldy, and Baldy. We'll
I
talk
hate
about
his
this.
pinkies.
Baldy said that the New York Giants were playing like the best defense in the NFC East, and then Jack Del Rio. What was his quote?
He was just like,
And with
"Oh,
all due
really?" or
respect,
something.
he was like,
Yeah.
with all due respect, ...
With all due respect, Baldy. ...
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be completely fair, I do think that Baldy had a CTE moment, or maybe just like an old
come
man
on.
moment. What? It's true. Or maybe just an old man moment where he just forgot that Washington was in this division. Because when you really
Right.
look at the numbers, yes, the Giants defense is playing good. They're playing above their expectations. Everybody expected this to be one of the worst defenses in the NFL. They're not that. They're playing pretty well, actually. But Washington's defense is just so much better than them in just about every statistical category. And they have so many more playmakers that
Right.
I don't even understand how you can make the argument. He did delete the tweet. I will
Yeah.
give him credit for that. 'Cause I do think that he was like, oh, shit, that's right. Washington.
Dude, I will say that it kind of reminds me of what the draft analysts do during draft day, where it doesn't matter what player comes up. Like, this is a guy, he's going to blow up the screen at you. He's going to do this, that, like, for
Yeah.
every player. That's where I kind of felt like where it was Baldy. It was like, right then, instantaneous, he's seeing the Giants. He's like, oh, yeah, it's the best defense in the NFC East without thinking, oh, yeah, Washington is down there.
And that
In
was,
the-
that was
in
my,
the-
my point. It's like recency bias. He's literally watching the game. He's watching what he's doing to Tom Brady. He's watching how like physical this D line is being with the O line and vice versa. And he's just like, wow, maybe I should pay attention to these Giants. Maybe well, they really are that good. Wow. Oh, they only came within 2 points of losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Wow, they are. No. With all due respect, Baldy. ... Nah, bruh. It ain't happening, bruh. Look, you want to, even if you go back and crunch the numbers, we're pretty much, I'm not going to say every single category, but I'm sure a majority of the categories we're better than them in. And obviously we're better than them in D-line. I'll even say secondary. I would call it a watch because they have Bradbury.
Against the pass, we're the best team in the NFL.
And exactly. If you want to go back to the numbers, we're number one against the pass.
Right.
So
And Kendall Fuller's playing better than Bradbury. Bradbury started off the season terrific according to PFF. Since then, Kendall Fuller's been the third best cornerback in the NFL. So,
9.3 passer rating. Just saying.
4 interceptions, tied for the league lead.
Yeah.
Hey.
That's all I'm saying.
And look, I was on Twitter. I believe it was yesterday. And of course, I just got to get riled up over nothing, right? Because it's Twitter, of course, and that just has to happen.
That's what it's there for.
But John Ledyard put out his bottom power rankings of the NFL, and he had all 3 NFC East teams on there in his bottom rankings. It was the Cowboys, it was the Washington football team, and it was the Giants. Eagles weren't in there. So I went after him, and I said, dude, how are the Eagles not in here? They've struggled against every team in the NFC East that they've played.
We beat them.
Right, we beat them. And
Dominated
not only a team, the Bengals that he had in that bottom half, tied the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right.
So what are you talking about here, dude? I was like, why are the Eagles getting a pass? Why?
Because it's literally one of the one deciding factor in all this. Because I was even watching, and this is what's been irking me lately. Because everyone just throws Washington to the side, and they've elevated the Giants over us for the division, and they're obviously putting the Eagles as the favorite when they have the hardest schedule going forward. Obviously, Carson Wentz is playing the worst out of all the quarterbacks other than DiNucci. He's a third string. I'm not
He
even
didn't count.
Yeah, he doesn't even count. He's playing the worst out of all the quarterbacks, arguably, in the NFC East. And we have the easiest schedule going forward in the NFC East. So it's just kind of like literally they put, it's Carson Wentz against Daniel Jones against Kyle Allen. Oh, well, Carson Wentz is the better. He has the better pedigree. He's the better quarterback. He has the better resume. So they're the favorites. When if you watch the eye test, Kyle Allen for these past, 2 weeks he's played, has looked better than Carson Wentz.
No, yeah.
He's looked better than Daniel Jones. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Give us some respect. Put some respect on our name.
To be completely honest, I'm not saying that he's better than these guys, but in some statistical categories, he's better than Lamar Jackson, Drew Brees, and Ben Roethlisberger.
Oh,
Kyle
come
Allen. No, he is. I swear to God, go look it
but
up. And
I know,
I'm
but you
like
can
I
find that in any
just
statistical category if
That's
you
what I'm
break
saying.
it down to detail.
What I literally just said is I'm
Okay.
not saying he's better than these guys. Obviously, I'm saying that some of
I'm
some
grabbing
of
my
the numbers
pitchfork.
are surprisingly better
Right.
than some of those guys. So it's just I don't think Kyle Allen's playing nearly as bad as people think. He's also not obviously any of those guys. But
It's like I told Phil on Twitter when he was like, "Oh, you're just letting that win go to your head and blah blah blah." No, this is like a known fact. Even going back to his Carolina days, if he
Phil, the
doesn't,
crying Cowboys fan.
yeah,
Okay.
if he doesn't turn the ball over, he's a serviceable quarterback that will win you the game. On top of a defense that's going to
Yeah.
give you short fields, on top of a run game that's getting better and better with Antonio Gibson and a little bit of J.D. McKissick sprinkled in there, why not us? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's a great question to ask because it would look like they have it wide open. Now, guys, we are joined by very special guests of the show, Kelsey Nelson of the Washington football team, host of The Fit and the Life. Good evening,
Hey.
Kelsey. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Pleasure to join you all.
Oh, pleasure. Pleasure is all ours, Kelsey. You are incredibly talented, and you just joined the Washington football team, so I have to ask you, how has it been going?
Oh my gosh, it's honestly been incredible. You guys have to remember, I'm a DMV born and bred girl, so to get to work for my hometown team, there's honestly nothing like it. Everyone's been so welcoming. The culture is changing, all these new faces and new people, and it's positive vibes. And of course, now we're starting to win games, which is always a good sign.
Yeah. Makes everything feel better when you're winning games.
Yeah. What a good time to be able to join the team too, with a new era starting out. We got everything seems to be going in the right direction. So good.
Yeah.
Good for you for being a part of it.
Yes, thanks so much for the warm welcome and getting to meet people like you all. So honestly, every day has been honestly truly amazing, and hopefully they keep me around for as long as they can, because
They will.
Each and every single moment of this experience.
Now, Kelsey, I do have to tell you, I have enjoyed The Life and the Fit. I saw the latest one you did was with Thomas Davis. If you could kind of give us and the viewers here, if they haven't seen it yet, what it's like, and then what could we be expecting in the next coming weeks?
Yeah, such a great question. So Thomas Davis, first off, I'm super jealous of him. If you have not seen that episode, I will say, like, don't even look at your shoe closet before you watch that episode. Angry that it does not compare. But Thomas Davis was honestly great. It was kind of fun. Him and Chase Young have a running kind of joke about who's the best drip on the team. Thomas Davis is like, I'm the oldest one on the team. If anybody knows about fashion and drip, it's definitely me. That was great. He lets us into his home and his house. He talks about being a Jordan brand ambassador, which I thought was truly amazing. Who wouldn't want to be a Jordan brand ambassador? And he got to meet MJ, and it was so cool because
so tight.
negotiated his deal for the Jordan brand. So not only are you an MJ brand ambassador, but your head coach negotiated your deal. Like, does it get that? Like, Thomas was so much fun to talk with. 6 closets full of shoes. He gets a box of shoes every month for the brand ambassador. And so him and his family are trying to figure out where to place all of these wonderful shoes. So on The Fit, it's the show where basically I get jealous of the players and remind them.
Thomas, send some my way. Size 11.
Well, who was that? Who was that player that had the MTV Cribs that had his own house for shoes?
What?
Do you guys remember that? Thomas Davis might need a new house just for his shoes, man. I'm telling you. But okay, so let me ask you here, Kelsey, because the big topic of discussion over the weekend was Ryan Kerrigan and Dwayne Haskins, and the Washington football team was very quiet at the trade deadline. So can you kind of clear the air for us? Because, you know, we hear from Adam Schefter that, yes, Ryan Kerrigan requested a trade, but then we hear from John Kahn that, look, that trade was requested a long time ago, and there's kind of like a mutual understanding. Can you try to help us and clear up the situation?
Yeah, I'll tell you guys, since I've joined the team, I'm not as much on the media side where I'm like prying into the business, especially with my show. So usually the old Kelsey before the Washington football team would have been the one that was right there. But, you know, for me, especially being someone that has covered the team before working for the team, it was shocking, right? Because Ryan Kerrigan has become such a cornerstone piece of this team. When you think of Washington, I said this maybe a year ago on 106.7 The Fan, I said he's probably one of the current most prolific figures in Washington, meaning like he's kind of been the one that so many fans have galvanized around him. Everybody in Washington loves Ryan Kerrigan. You never hear a bad thing about Ryan Kerrigan. When you think about it, I mean, he's been something that's been going for the team for a while now, right? Like, doesn't matter what happens on the game, Ryan Kerrigan has kind of been that person you can count on, right? Look at his consistency in games. I mean, talk about a player that you always know is there and is durable. And so that was pretty in shock, right? You're like this person that has always been there. But I think we all kind of saw maybe the writing on the wall. Because, I mean, who's not going to be happy, right, when your play time has went down, especially when you still know you're a great player. So I think, you know, we were surprised, but it
Right.
sounds like hopefully it's something in Washington that can be, just we can hopefully find a solution or an answer because you do want to keep Ryan Kerrigan happy. And then the Dwayne Haskins saga has kind of been something that's kind of been unraveling, right? Like we see, let's be honest, being from this area every year, right? We want the Super Bowl, we want the quarterbacks that's going to basically win it all for us. And so Dwayne Haskins, I think, the year started, we were excited. Like that Eagles win, I think we're all still like.
Yeah, I say it all the time. I think the Eagles game was the worst thing to happen to this fan base in a long time because it gave so many people so much hope.
Like we can do anything. We can.
We're gonna dominate every game.
We're on top of the world. And then all of a sudden, kind of reality hit in, not just for Washington, but overall the NFC East. And we have to remember, Dwayne Haskins is a young quarterback, right? At Ohio State, you have weapons upon weapons upon weapons, right? So your job is a little bit easier when you're playing with some of the best weapons. But you come to Washington, they're a very young team. Again, most of the guys on the team, look at their age, right? Like I have to remind myself when I'm talking to them, like I'm older than on the team. And so I think we saw like people want progress and they want to happen quickly. Dwayne Haskins, again, is a very great quarterback, but I think unfortunately for him, he's being compared to other young quarterbacks who, quite frankly, are just playing lights out football, right? You look right next door to Baltimore. Even though Lamar Jackson is not having the year he had last year, but you compare him to someone like a Lamar Jackson. You see what Lamar did last year, which is why he was MVP. It's not a fair comparison, but when he gets compared to those type of people, I think the pressure puts on him in Washington, right? We have a new coach. We want this winning culture to kind of turn into something. And remember, fans want the wins, right? Like we, after last season, we were tired, right? The culture's changing, all of these new developments in Washington. So I think with Haskins, we're still kind of figuring out like who's that quarterback going to be. For me, covering the team and even just growing up here, I think people kind of want that RG3 type of feeling back in Washington. And RG3 mania, it has not happened like that yet, right? No. Alex Smith, I think, was getting to a point. Then, of course, we all know what happened with Alex Smith. I think that was probably the biggest moment for me, just seeing him be able to step back on that football field. But even with Kyle Allen, we're seeing a young guy continue to develop, and we're kind of seeing what he can do. I don't think we've seen the best of what Kyle Allen can do. I don't think we've seen the best of what Dwayne Haskins can do, because again, they're still growing, they're still young, they're still meshing with the O-line. Like there's still so much to tell. So basically, it's impatient fans and a young team, and we're trying to find this kind of happy to get this season.
People forget that Dwayne Haskins only started one season at Ohio State. I mean, he's still so raw. And you're right. After this offseason of him with all the Instagram videos and him losing all this weight and putting in all this work with all these superstar wide receivers, the expectations were so high that it was almost just doomed from the start. I feel like, and it's sad because Dwayne does seem like a good dude, and I do feel like he has so much potential. It's just he was kind of given an unfair expectations, right?
Feeling high, like you said, right? Like he lost all this weight, and that was a complaint that happened last season, right? Like, oh, he's too big, he can't move,
right?
Like you said, you put on these electric, and see, Instagram and social media spoil us because we see all
I know.
We're like, oh, we want the football field, and then it comes to the football field, and everybody's actually playing their actual best, and it's not as easy. Like, let's remember, Lamar Jackson hopped over a jet ski this summer, right? Something that he would never want to do. This year, he's not having as easy of a time, right, getting through the defenders. So just look at what social media can do. And then you look at a real football game, and sometimes we put these unrealistic expectations, quite frankly, because we love the team, onto the team. But I think Haskins, again, his story's still being written. Like you said, at Ohio State, look at his starting experience. Because remember who he was playing behind. And Ohio State always has that problem, right? Because they always have so many talented players. I mean, you look at someone like a Joe Burrow and you see how his transfer happened, and look what kind of happened with him when we got to see his talent. If Joe Burrow never went to LSU, would we even know who his
real
be following him with the Bengals now? So, I mean, we have to give it time. I know it's the hardest thing to do. You have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, a young quarterback who's been doing incredible things, but not everyone is Patrick Mahomes. That's why Patrick Mahomes has that huge contract this time, right? It's not everyone, but I think Haskins will be fine. He has an arm. That's never been a question. I think it's, just meshing and gelling with the team, and, just gelling with the receivers. And also we have to remember too, I mean, the quarterback is not going to be the only one to win games. In Washington, it's a whole team effort. We love Terry McLaurin, but, we need to see more, right? We need to see the receiving corps working more. We love Antonio Gibson. We want the whole running game to always be working. So there's just many different things that need to happen in Washington before we point the finger at one person.
Yeah, Kelsey, you just had said a name there, so it struck the question in my mind. We're 8 weeks through the season, right? I know the team has only played 7 games, but if you could point to, say, one player or person in particular as the MVP of the team so far, who would it be?
I'm looking at one of the jerseys behind you already, and I'm like, I think we can all say, like, Terry's just been having an amazing season, but that's what was expected. But I think let me tell you, and I think I'm kind of biased. I did interview him, but I have actually loved the continued progression of Antonio Gibson. And you think about what happened when we saw Adrian Peterson leave. I think all of us were like, wait. I still remember when I saw that news, I was like, wait, Adrian Peterson's leaving.
Right.
Like, what? This can't be wrong. Like, something's wrong with my phone. The update went bad or wrong. But then I think when you see somebody like Antonio Gibson, then you start to see why it happened, because you see how good this running core is. So he's been very impressive to watch. Montez Sweat, I don't think he gets enough recognition. I think he's also been having a great season. But of course, when you're playing next to someone like a Chase Young, who we're all just kind of galvanized behind, it's kind of hard to get that recognition when you're next to it. So I think out of those three, I would probably pick one of those. But there's unsung heroes on that Washington team that have been making it work, even though they don't get the credit, right? Because if you don't get a win at the end of the day, nobody cares, because they're going to point out the million things, right, that went wrong. But
Kendall Fuller too. Kendall Fuller's playing amazing.
And he's a Baltimore guy, which I love. I love hometown people. Kendall Fuller, I think, has also just been incredible. When we look at the interceptions he's had, like, when you think about interceptions for the season, you have to look at Kendall Fuller, how he's leading that list, and he can transform and change games, right?
He's allowing a 9.6 passer rating when targeted.
Yeah. So, I mean, does it get any better than that?
Right.
So, a couple people on this Washington team you can kind of look at and say, you know what, like this,
building block.
The season keep alive, and why I'm still a fan, why I'm still in this fan base, because it's help with you on this football team.
Now, Kelsey, I'm going to put you on the spot, because you just alluded to that you are a fan of this team. You've been a fan of this team for a long time, and there is a big transitioning happening with the name. So, do you have a name preference? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I have to know.
Put me on the spot. It's fine. I'll tell you. I wouldn't say I have a full name preference, but whatever it is, because I'm from the area, I do want it to have ties to DC. That's my only criterion goal. When I hear the name, I want to think DC. I was a person that loved our G League team, the Capital City Go-Go, because of course it has a tie to the go-go music that is born and bred in the DC area. So whatever it is, as long as I'm going to hear it, I think of DC, I will be a happy camper and a happy person. I think like most people, I do love keeping the HTTR if there is some way to keep that. Just honor the city, and I will be a happy person. If we can't play in DC, at least let the name have some DC reference.
Hey, to piggyback off that, your opinion on RFK, the new stadium. I know Jason Wright was on Ben Standig's podcast, I think last week. He'd alluded to the possibility of demolishing FedEx and rebuilding it, or RFK, or going to a different stadium. What is your preference for that?
I mean, I'll be honest, again, being from the area, I would love RFK Stadium.
Yep.
We have different plans in DC for it, but it's historic, right? I mean, you talk to former players and you just hear the way that was there, right? And good things happen to us, quite frankly, at RFK Stadium. And again, I think it's so nice to be able to play in the city in which you want. And again, I love playing in Landover. I think FedEx Field is great. I mean, could it use a redo and makeover? Oh, yeah, I mean, everybody wants the new flashy stadium, especially when we get to see a place like Vegas, right, and their brand new stadium that they have out there for the Raiders. But I would say if there's any way that the team could play in DC, I think it just play homage to what this team means to the city. I mean, but the great thing about being in the DMV area, though, I'll say, is that we are the DMV, right? The team pretty much represents the DMV area, so they could play anywhere. But yes, if we could go back to RFK Stadium, like, not in my hands, whatever, we have to vote on it on the ballot, like, whatever we would need to do. Fully a fan of.
Right. And I'm going to try to put you on the spot a little bit again. You've interviewed a couple players like Thomas Davis, Chase Young, all those guys.
Stole it from me.
Who would you say is your favorite interviewed?
Ooh, see, now I'm in trouble with this question. Guys hear this in the locker room, I might get some hate. Honestly, I feel like this is such a cliche answer, but I feel like Antonio Gandy Golden. I mean, he's one of those people you talk with, and my mind just kept spinning, and he is an old soul, and I kind of grew up, I feel like, an old soul. So talking with him, I had to remind myself how young he is and that he is a rookie, because I mean, he's such an interesting person. Like, he's not your generic interviewee. Like, you think you have an answer for him, and he goes totally left. And then he has a deep voice too that surprised me. Like, I was he was great, and he opened up. He wasn't shy about anything. I probably have to say Jimmy Moreland too, just because I got Jimmy Moreland on both shows, so I feel like I kind of got to really know him probably the best out of all the players, since I've talked to him the most so far out of all the Washington teams.
Is Jimmy as funny as everybody says he is? Everybody says that he's the funniest guy on the team.
Jimmy's funny. I think when I asked him, after I had him on the live, I had him on the fit, and the first thing I said was, how did we do? He's like, you did good, but you could have told me my forehead was shiny.
That's
Jimmy, I thought TR had you, I didn't know. I did not. But Jimmy's great. I mean, that's what makes the interviews fun. Like all the players give you their all. We're smiling, we're laughing, no matter what else is happening
Right.
in Washington. I think especially
Right.
tonight, right, with this election.
Yeah.
Still
Right.
fun. We're still laughing. We're still smiles because again, we know better things are ahead. And again, when you have a good culture, it doesn't matter what else is happening on the outside. Like you feel it on the inside, and things just move. And I think that's what's happening in Ashburn. It's what's happening in Washington, and it's what's happening with the organization.
So, Kelsey, I have to ask you a sort of a sensitive question, but I don't mean to rub you the wrong way. But because with the fan base, they have questions about the park, right? And from your perspective, from a female's perspective, how is the atmosphere at the park based on your brief stint thus far?
So I'm glad you said brief because, right, I think I'm a little bit over a month into the job.
Right.
So I don't act like I've been there for a long time. But for me, and I'll also tell you guys this, for me, when I go in, I'm literally only in like the media wing. So
Okay.
like when I go to the park, I'm there, but I'm only interacting with like the media personnel. And then the payroll people are there too, which is always nice, right? So, so I feel like I'm like in that smaller part. So for me, the people I interact with, I think you guys have talked to Julie Donaldson,
Right.
Marcus Stevenson, and my producer Kyle Iron. It's been great. Like I said, it's a positive vibe, positive spirit. We're joking, we're laughing, we're brainstorming off of each other. I only literally see the players like when they're literally going into the entrance,
Okay.
getting tested. But I haven't had a chance to interact. I haven't even been down to honestly a practice yet. I literally
Oh,
go
wow.
in and I'm taping shows. I feel like I'm kind of like diluted from it. But like I said, for
Right.
us, it's been positive and new. There's new people, new blood, new spirits. So it's been good. We get fed lunch. Like it's been good for me.
Well,
But
the reason.
unfortunately, I can't fully answer it just because I'm not fully in the park. Just because we're not allowed to go over to like the main part because
Okay.
of
Right.
COVID
Yeah.
testing. We're even in a makeshift studio. Like we're in the studio we tape in is technically a podcast studio that we've
Okay.
actually a television studio because we have to be blocked off from the players because we don't want anybody to get COVID-19.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the reason why I was asking, because like with everything that it's talked about on a national scale, like we try to get the best aspect we can possible. Try to paint like how everything is going over there because everything that we see is an obvious upgrade. It's an uptick. Everyone loves to be there. It's not the same type of doom and gloom that you're hearing. Everything is being dealt with better. I was just trying to get a better aspect, not trying to, poke you. I understand completely. It's been very brief.
Sorry for putting you on the spot so much this interview. Every question just don't mean to put you on the spot, but
Like that's what you're supposed to do as media. Like I do it to people, you have to be able to handle it. But again, I think that's what's been great for me. And when I decided to make the decision to join the organization, like it's the transparency. You don't always get that in sports. And I feel like I've never had questions. Obviously, it's no secret that, this summer was a tough summer for the organization, but I'm big on vibes and spirits and I'm big on culture. Like every job interview, I've always asked, what's the culture like of the organization? I have a big personality and I want to make sure that it fits into the organization, right? Because how you work and who you work with plays a large role into your success with an organization. And I think that's why for me, again, it's been great to work with. From the day I came in, everyone's been warm and welcoming. And if I have questions, they're quickly answered and asked. And again, that's why it doesn't matter what the record is of the team, like overall, the organization's been so positive. I think today was a great example of that. I love seeing the organization making sure people vote. Making sure people voted, everything out there. Like stuff like that to me is important and what I care about. It's more than just the play, on the football field, right? It's so much more. And again, I think that's why you're just starting to see things change in Washington. Hopefully, again, this transpires to wins on the football field. I'm already looking at November 8th, looking at that game. So it's a winnable game. So hopefully this momentum continues that we had before the bye week.
That is so good to hear.
Now, correct
Just
me.
a breath of fresh air.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelsey. Have you met Mr. Wright?
No, I haven't. It's so
Okay.
crazy. He's on my list. I haven't met him yet. And honestly, he still needs to follow me on Twitter. I'm just putting that. But I want to. I see all of his interviews like you guys. So I haven't had a chance to meet him yet, which I'm pretty sad about because I just think he's been so amazing. And everybody asks me that first. They say, have you met Jason Wright? I'm like, not a chance. And they're like, have you met Doug? I'm like, well, I knew Doug Williams before, so I don't count him. But I have not had a chance yet to be around Jason. So Jason, if you're listening to this, come in the media wing and come chat me out, whatever needs to be done. But I just think he's such a perfect example of like what's going right in Washington, being transparent with the fans, and again changing that culture that we needed to be changed as we usher in this new era in Washington for the Washington football team.
Yeah, we interviewed Doug not too long ago, and that was a fantastic interview. He is so much fun.
People in the world. Doug Williams is hilarious.
Yes, and just a fun spirit again. So people.
He accidentally said the R word, and his reaction was absolutely hysterical. He's like, "Oh." I'm so sorry.
But then it's like, what are you gonna do to Doug Williams? What are you gonna do? Be like, don't say Redskins.
It looked funny, and that's something again that we're all still getting used to again.
Right.
Growing up here, right? And just it's I say it slowly. Washington football team, so I make sure I fully get it out. But
We have an R word
Yes.
jar that we have, and every time one of us says it, we have to put $1 into it.
I like
So,
that. That's a
yeah.
good way. See, 'cause when you're
I'm in debt like $300 right now.
But like we'll get through it. And again, I think it's just an exciting time. I think like most people, as you guys alluded to, I mean, we all want that name. But until then, again, for me, I care more about the identity of the football field, of the football team on the football field, right? A name, it's great, but at the end of the day, you can have the greatest name in the world, but if you're not winning games, who cares?
Yep.
Right.
That's just how I feel. So again, I want a great name, but I'd rather right now focus on the play on the football field, and especially since the NFC East is still open, focus on winning hopefully that division, and then we can worry about the name. That's just
And Kelsey, so let's wrap this thing up. I know you're incredibly busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to be able to talk to us because it's been great so far. But let's look for the future now. Let's look at this weekend. Do you think the Washington football team will be able to beat the New York Giants this weekend, given that they did lose in the relative future, but it was almost the Washington football team shot themselves in the foot? Do you think that they're going to make those same mistakes?
Yeah, no, I think this is a team that's young and learning. I think, watching that last Giants game against the Buccaneers, which, wow, who even thought that we would see a game like that, right? I think wrote them off. But I think, the Giants are young and learning. Washington. But I think momentum now is on our side. Like anytime that you get to be that rival, right? The Dallas Cowboys, who claim to be America's team, it's good. It's good feelings. Yeah. And for a young team too, those wins mean even more, right? Keeping that momentum up. So I do think, we learned from the mistakes. And again, you guys talked about it. I mean, that game was so close, right? A game that honestly, quite frankly, we could have won.
Yeah,
should have.
Literally one play away from winning that game.
We were waiting for
a 2-point conversion away. Yeah.
That close. Fans back in the stands even. I think just, having.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot about that.
True. Yeah.
I feel like momentum's on Washington's side. And since the guys, they didn't. The bye week is different now, right? Because you couldn't really go away. Like they're still having to come into the facility every day and test. Their mind's still on the game plan. They're still focused mentally. Like I think they're going to get down to business, and they want that win. And the guys just like us know how close the NFC East division is and how much every game will count. And again, that division game, I think we're going to get the win. I feel pretty good going into it. So I think it's a win. I'm already putting it on my calendar as a win.
There we go. That's what I like to hear, especially on a night like tonight. That's what I need to hear, some reassurance from you, Kelsey. I really do appreciate you taking the time out because, look, you're incredibly busy. You have a lot to do, and I really do appreciate you taking the time out and joining us for Little Old Pod to give us some great insight.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you for the invite so much. And if everyone can please, we're bringing the shows back this week. I can do a quick plug because I feel like I have to.
Of course. The floor is yours.
Right.
On the 5th this week, Peyton Barber will join me. So I think everyone definitely wants to check that out. Very, very fun interview and guy. And then one of the newest members of the team, Casey Toohill, will actually be joining me on the live.
Okay.
To find out more about our in Washington. So I highly recommend everyone checks that out. And of course, Washington Unfiltered at 9:30 a.m. on Saturdays, where we recap all of the great unfiltered shows. So you guys have Doc Walker and Chip and everybody that does the unfiltered shows. Julie Donaldson.
Yep.
So hopefully everybody can join and check it out.
We definitely will. Make sure you guys go and check that out. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We will see you guys on Thursday. Go like and share us on all the social media platforms. Kelsey, I can't thank you enough. You were fantastic. Obviously, the Washington football team has some good people in there. They see talent for what it is, and they did a fantastic job of hiring you. Congratulations on the job.
It means so much. Thank you guys so much. And again, everyone stay sane tonight. Look, there's a late night. We have football on Sunday, so I'm excited. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Yes, have a great night.
All right, guys. Washington football. Woo!